Attorney Nathaniel Lee, a lawyer with credibility, success, and experience. Representing people in hundreds of jury trials, Nathaniel Lee is who you want by your side in the courtroom. You've seen the rest, now hire the best. Contact Lee, Cosell, and Feigley today. And now, to address the legal concerns of the community, Praise AM 95.1 FM presents Legally Speaking. Here are today's hosts.
Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. Thank you once again for listening to our show. Special thank to our audience in Chicago. We thank you for supporting this show. We had substantial numbers, and also a shout out to the Jesse Jackson community. Today, we do a follow-up to the numerous legal issues that are affecting us. There's so many, it's hard to keep track of them. It's like we're getting legal whiplash. There's so many. So to sort it out, we're going to have Marlon Grimes, formerly U.S. Attorney's Office for career, and we have, of course, Milton Grimes and Vanita Banks. And so we have a really full show today. So we'll get started right away. One of the biggest legal stories this week dealt with the attempted dismissal of charges against the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. It'd been populating the TV every day, and I'm getting sick of watching it. And maybe we could sort it out today to try to explain exactly what happened and why it is such a significant legal issue that facing our society today. Maybe we start out with Marlon. Could you explain to us about this Eric Adams and the U.S. attorneys? It seemed like they referenced this back to the Nixon debacle back in the 70s.
Yes. Well, hey, it's good to be with you, Nathaniel and Milton and Vanita. Yes, this is definitely a problem. What basically happened is that Mayor Adams was indicted prior to the presidential election because of allegations of influence peddling and violations of various laws. And there were a number of people that raised concerns that it was too close to an election. And there's, rules in place, basically making sure that any sort of legal action before the election is not taking place. So when President Trump was elected and sworn into office, his Department of Justice basically had signaled for a number of weeks that perhaps they were going to dismiss the case against Mayor Adams. Now, the allegations that have not been corroborated are that Mayor Adams allegedly, made, assertions that he was going to support the president's immigration initiatives, and that, in fact, was the reason these charges are dismissed. Now, those have not been proven. Those are just what has been alleged. And so there was an instruction by the new Attorney General and the Department of Justice to dismiss the indictment against Mayor Adams. And there's a number of assistant U.S. attorneys in the Southern District of New York, which is one of the most prominent U.S. attorneys' offices. The individuals at that office, many of whom are career prosecutors, objected. They wanted to understand the legal basis, and there should be some consistency and continuity between administrations. So as a consequence, a number of attorneys, assistant U.S. attorneys, and even individuals at the Department of Justice, resigned in protest. And there was one attorney that sent a pretty scathing letter as it relates to the reasons why those resignations, in fact, were taking place. So it's a mess. To make a long story short, they could not find anybody to sign the pleadings, and so eventually they got individuals in Washington to take over the case. They signed the pleading indicating that the case, in fact, would be dismissed. So there's a lot of controversy as a result of this action.
Wow. Hey, Milton, you have any questions?
I'm just shaking. It creates a fear throughout the legal system that is designed to protect all Americans. And seems like the president is running that office. What are we going to do about that? He's appointing all attorneys who have represented him, and it seems as though they're still representing him.
There are major conflict of interest. Mayor Adams had been indicted for bribery, wire fraud, conspiracy, and 2 counts of soliciting campaign contribution from foreign nationals. You'll recall, colleagues, that some of the other leaders in his administration had been indicted as well and had stepped down. And it appears, that this coziness with the president, may have resulted in this dismissal. And as Attorney Prime stated, that several assistant U.S. attorneys, Attorney Primes, they resigned and stepped down and said they refused to be part of dismissing charges against Mayor Adams. But this is one of many, many examples that I'm sure we'll be talking about today regarding how the rule of law is being trampled on, and how this is a clear example of unequal justice. The criminal justice system is supposed to be equal and protect, of course, all citizens, and there's the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. But this is really a flagrant abuse of the system. And to your question, Attorney Grimes, I don't know what we do about it, but we have to have a plan.
Well, this letter was a 5-page letter. It's a scathing letter. And he outlines in this letter this one attorney named Daniel Sassoon, Sassoon, and he wrote an 8-page letter, and it's a really good summary of everything that occurred. And he said something that was bizarre in his letter. He said, in like on the 7th page, in particular, the rationale given by Mr. Bovee and a change between a criminal defendant and the Department of Justice akin to the bout exchange with Russian, as explained above, a bargain that a prosecutor should not make. Moreover, dismissal without prejudice and with the express option of again indicting Adam in the future create obvious ethical problems by implicitly threatening future prosecution if Adams' cooperation with enforcing the immigration laws prove unsatisfactory to the Department of Justice. Marla, this is insane. So the Department of Justice makes a deal that said, you do what we say when we say, if not, we're going to prosecute you again. I've never heard anything so asinine before.
Yes, I mean, one of the things that they taught us and drilled in our heads of the Department of Justice is that you not only want to avoid impropriety, but you want to avoid the appearance of impropriety. And so a lot of what's going on, certainly is problematic. And there should be some continuity, between administrations. There's an understanding that administrations may have different philosophies, but there should be a clear, a legal reason, why one administration is changing course on a particular case as opposed to just pure politics. And what's deeply troubling is that if there's some type of quid pro quo, that will have to be, investigated. It's an allegation right now, but it certainly causes a lot of concern, especially, DOJ alumni and also, those that currently work in the department.
Well, what happens next if Adams doesn't do what they tell him to do, then, and they re-indict Adams, would that be more of a crisis and Adam could then move to dismiss based on the fact that he's been blackmailed?
Well, there's a lot of different issues that could come about, and this is why, you should proceed with caution in terms of, what is being done. There needs to be an investigation, figure out, what's fact and fiction, because you're right, there's a whole thorny set of legal issues that could come out in the future if that in fact happens.
Well, it's a tough situation, and I don't know where I've ever seen anything since I've been in the practice for 43 years similar to this. It's just such an amazing development. And I was looking at the contents of his letter. He cited cases, he cited ethical rules, and basically he's saying that this is criminal misconduct on the part of the Justice Department for even doing this deal. I don't get it. And so now when we have a system where the Justice Department is protecting the rights of citizens, now we see a radical departure where now the Justice Department itself is saying that if you don't do exactly what I say, I can prosecute you. I mean, I don't know. This is just beyond the pale in terms of how the system should work. And what would be the legal remedy to fix this?
Well, I mean, I think in terms, well, go ahead, Milton.
Nothing. I was going to say something a little radical. Go ahead.
Well,
short of some revolt by the people, if you don't have respect for law and order, what do you do? What do you get? You get
anarchy.
You get anarchy. You get chaos. You get people going to the streets. My son not going to jail under this system. My daughter not going to be indicted under this system where you choose who to indict and for what. And it destroys what we can supposed to have as the rule of law. It's no
right.
need.
The biggest weapon that the Department of Justice, and our judiciary have is that people have confidence in what we do. Mm-hmm. And if there isn't confidence, it's almost a breakdown of the system. And so there needs to be more explanation in terms of, why the administration is taking this action and giving people confidence that it's just not pure politics. Now, in terms of recourse, as relates to, existing, employees and those perhaps that have been dismissed or those that have resigned, there's potential causes of action. We have a system that was based upon the reforms that we have career attorneys, not all political appointees. And that's the very reason that you want people that have some institutional knowledge and they're not tied to, a particular administration. Their North Star should be the rule of law. So we have to also educate the public in terms of where we're at. Nathaniel Jones, that many of you all know, that was the general counsel of the NAACP and was the first African-American assistant U.S. attorney in the Northern District of Ohio, where I served as a assistant U.S. attorney and also went on to the Sixth Circuit, basically described, how the Justice Department was before the reforms that were enacted by the Church Commission that many remember. It used to be that everybody in the office had to go to the local political office and be interviewed before you could get a job at the Department of Justice. Then you had reforms in place saying that, hey, that's not the best system because in a presidential year, instead of doing the people's business, employees are going to be looking for a job and they're not going to have that North Star of the rule of law. So if we're not careful, we'll go back to those days in terms of just pure politics. And I think, what we need to do in terms of, Milton's question is, we need to protest. We need to make sure people are aware of what's going on through our institutions, that we do not want to go back to where we were before.
Okay. Now, we have a number of issues that raised because we have a problem with people calling in. Pierre contends that U.S. attorneys make political prosecution decisions every day. What's the difference? And also, Emma Tetson, can Adam then face state charges?
Well, federal is different than state, so you're not going to have a double jeopardy because you have a state prosecution and the federal prosecution hasn't gone anywhere. I mean, that's what happened in a number of prominent cases that a number of us are familiar with, where a state prosecution may go awry and then there's a federal prosecution. So there can be two different prosecutions without having double jeopardy and it being unconstitutional. So the answer to the question is yes, there can be state prosecutions.
Well, this is a tricky part, though. These U.S. attorneys that resign, I mean, they get paid, what, twice a month? Or as a U.S. attorney, you get paid twice a month, right?
Correct.
So when they resign, would they be eligible to get unemployment benefits?
Well, it depends upon, whether or not the department is going to challenge it. I mean, if they resign, I mean, they're going to have to show, hostile work environment. There's a lot of different procedural hurdles they're going to have to, take, which should be more reason to raise alarm bells, amongst the public that, these are good, secure jobs. And yet you have individuals that are very experienced. And if you look at the press reports, some of the people that are resigning aren't people that are progressive. These are individuals that have worked for conservative judges, have been parts of the federal society. So alarm bells should in fact go off.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Vanita, Milton.
In my reading, Marlon and Vanita and Nate, where you have people who are disenchanted and insecure with the government for whatever reason or another, people will assert themselves and attempt to take charge. You have countries that the people are escaping from coming to the U.S. for more peaceful existence. It seems as though we're heading towards the same thing now. I don't want to say.
Well, we're either on the brink of or we're in the midst of a constitutional crisis on so many issues that we've seen over the last, has it been 30 days?
It's almost anarchy here. We can't rely on our government to follow the law and protect us. Then what's your choice?
I'm concerned about the fact that when I keep reading these news articles every day, that we're beyond the constitutional crisis stage.
Right.
It's almost like right before our eyes, I hate to say this, looked like that the democracy that I knew growing up and becoming a lawyer, that it's escaping us. It's almost like that we're going into a political climate whereby we're actually saying to hell with democracy. What separates us now from these banana republic? And, I just hope that the judiciary hold firm to the process, but I'm concerned about that.
Your judiciary.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I was just going to say the judiciary a lot of it is backing up the president's moves. So what judiciary are you talking about?
Well, there are judges that have issued temporary restraining orders regarding several of these executive actions, including the executive action regarding birthright citizenship. Several states have filed litigation, and one of the judges stated in his ruling, where were the lawyers in the room when this executive order was drafted? because in his view, it is blatantly unconstitutional and violates the 14th Amendment, full stop.
I saw something either in the newspaper or on the internet where 4 or 5 of his personal lawyers are taking over the head of various departments around this country.
Mm-hmm.
And others that they don't even list, but it looks like his law office or his lawyers taking over the power positions in our major organizations and doing what he wants them to do, not what's necessarily good for the public. I don't think we may not be the most informed group of people in the world when dealing with politics, but I was talking to a Colombian friend of mine, a young man who fixes my copy machine, about this situation. He said, you see the corruption, you see this man is using this system to put money in his own pockets. It's much like we experience in our country. And so you can expect what are the people going to do? Eventually, they're going to be pushed to an uprising. And it's simple. So I think we're facing a serious potential crisis here.
I placed in the chat box a toolkit to answer the question to citizens, what can you do to take action? From February 14th, yesterday through Sunday, February 23rd, your House representatives will be back home in your district. So this is your opportunity to participate in district office visits and to demand answers from your representatives face to face. Keep in mind, they work for us. And so this is an opportunity when they're back in the district to make your voices heard. There are several protests that are taking place at local Tesla locations nationwide to protest and expose shadow President Elon Musk role in the what appears to be, colleagues, an outright coup.
Right.
What do you think?
Vanita, when Oregon first started that quick defense, they would huddle, and not to exclude you because you're a female, but I know Nate and Marlon probably remember this. They line up. As soon as the players run, they run another. They run another. They wore defenses butts out for a couple of years until people caught on to how to slow that machine down. Here we have a government that every day they're changing something new. They're changing something else. By the time you deal with this one today, you got another 2 or 3 things that's out there that's taken back or taken away from the people. So that's Elon Musk's tactic. I think he pretty much stated on one occasion, they can't keep up with them.
Right. A lot of
And
this,
all, but it was all laid out in Project 2025, that 900-page playbook for what we're seeing play out today. And I'm hearing a lot of conversations around the Democrats were left flat-footed, didn't have a plan, all of these things. But my question to each of us is, what type of plan could have addressed what we're seeing today?
well, I mean, there was a good deal of discussion about Project, 25, 2025.
Leading up to.
And I think one of the things that we should do now is we should start developing our own plan. And here are some of the things that we can do to make things better. I think we also have to use our megaphone through our existing organizations. Many of the African American organizations were founded, immediately after, Plessy v. Ferguson, the NAACP, the National Bar Association. Then you have the Urban League. I mean, these are institutions that we're really there to try to, make things better. I think we have to, make sure that we're strengthening those institutions, because I think that's going to be, what's going to be crucial for us advancing, because they definitely have a plan, and the plan does not include us. And so we have to go back to our plan to make things better. And I think, some of the things that we've done in the past uh, really helped us in that period prior to the Civil Rights Act being passed, voting rights, housing. We need to go back to that playbook as well to strengthen us. And then we have our HBCUs. We have to strengthen them as well. So that should be part of our playbook. We don't have to start from scratch. We have a playbook from, our forefathers that face, tremendous, odds and consequences. I love talking to a lot of our older attorneys here in Cleveland and around the country when I was a younger attorney, and some of the stories they told me that African Americans could not even get office space downtown. There was no opportunity for them to work at law firms or work at corporations. And a lot of individuals, even a story I often tell is there was a young man that was a student at our flagship university, Ohio State. And he says that the dean of the law school basically met with all the Black students. There was only a handful of them. And he says, look, I'm going to be honest with you. There is no opportunity for you out here. And I said, well, weren't you devastated? He said, no. He said, I wasn't devastated. I was glad he told me the truth. So the point is that, we have to remind, our communities in terms of where we came from, what were the hurdles and what were the reason that we put those protections in place, such as, the executive order that Lyndon Baines Johnson passed in 1965 or issued regarding diversity and inclusion. And we have to, be a greater megaphone to say, hey, there are a lot of people that were left out, and we don't want to go back there. And so if we get our message out, if we start strengthening our institutions, our HBCUs, I think we'll be in a better position. It won't be perfect, but I think we'll be in a better position if we do so.
You're absolutely right, Attorney Primes. I was just writing as you were speaking that we have a playbook as well. And it's based on our historic civil rights advocacy, which you so eloquently summarized and pointed out. Let's take, for example, the Montgomery bus boycott. That boycott lasted over 365 days. And I'm sure there may have been some people that said, that's too far for me to walk to work. I've got to use the bus. But guess what? Everybody came together around that boycott. And that's what we need to do, as a people, as we're looking at those retailers that have pushed back on DEI. We must look at our playbook, as you suggested, Attorney Primes, on how today to deal with those retailers. You have people saying that in rural communities, that's how some of our people get food, from the Walmarts and Targets. So we have to figure out how to get our people, the resources that they need and still protest those institutions. If we decide that we're not going to buy anymore from Amazon, I'm sure that'll send a lot of people into conniptions. But we have to remember our ancestors who, as one example, they decided they were not going to take the bus, right, for over a year. And they were successful in the impact that they had, that the economic impact was palpable. And so, Attorney Primes, you're absolutely right. We do have a playbook. We need to join our organizations such as the NAACP and the Urban League. We should all come together at this time with one voice in with respect to our response to these issues. We also have to herald loudly the fact that diversity, equity, and inclusion was never intended for unqualified people to get jobs in corporate America or to obtain federal contracts. DEI was established because qualified, and many of us around this table understand that many times overqualified professionals to have an opportunity to get in the door of corporate America. We also know that there are very, very strict requirements to become a federal contractor. So um, we just have to hold firm to our values, create concise messaging that resonates, across the nation.
Yeah, and what I think we can do as well is that, each person, as Attorney Banks has indicated, I mean, there's a lot that we can do. And what I would suggest is that in our own individual lives, how can we support a Black law firm, a Black dentist, a Black doctor, a Black business owner? We have a lot of, income if collectively and individually. And if we just, do that, I mean, that would help, tremendously because, the reality of it is in terms of, where things are going, they're looking to make it so that you don't have to hire anybody and that you could, escort us out the door without, any pushback. So in response, we need to, strengthen our own, employment ranks. We need to help, individuals that are interested in, starting, businesses. We need to encourage young people to start their own businesses, raising capital, providing expertise to individuals. I mean, that's, part of the pathway forward. And then I think the other pathway is using our influence in terms of protests. You take this action, okay, here's how we're going to boycott. Here's going to be our response. And then third and finally, we got to educate people that this, lack of, these anti-diversity initiatives, all we're asking for is to have a referee on the field, given the history of this country of slavery and segregation. That's all we're basically saying. An example I give is I applied for a job as an adjunct at the University of Akron, and there was an EEO officer there at the meeting. So she was there for everybody's interview, and she could determine, hey, are the same questions being answered? What is the selection process? Is it based upon merit? That's all we're saying in terms of diversity. Have a referee on the field in terms of whether these corporations and companies are being fair. That's why you have a diversity office. That's why you have an office at these colleges and universities. So I think we need to be better in terms of articulating our message as well.
Milton, you raise your hand. Go
I
ahead.
don't agree with what you and Vanita have said thus far, that we've had plans, we have plans, but I just see this present regime being a little different than what we dealt with before. We have a president who has sided up with two of the biggest dictators in the world. He wants to be a dictator himself. He has espoused that. He's got a right-hand man that's going crazy with changes here. I just think we're facing a different situation than we have in the past that went a little slower than what they're doing now. So I don't know if we can fight this battle with the old playbook, guys. That's all.
Well, it has to be an updated playbook.
Right.
I understand that. And, we have tools that we didn't have back then in terms of, social media
And so do they.
communication challenges. You're absolutely right. You predicted this, Milton, in terms of the election and no consequences so far or accountability for this president. You predicted this way before the election, and in a sense, the radicalization of 70 million people, right, with rhetoric, to take wording such as DEI and conflate that with unqualified. DEI inherently means merit and qualified,
There's no
but those
no
terms
truth
are
in this.
being conflated to mean to mean something that they were never intended to be. I again, you all have heard on these calls that I'm against the word misinformation and disinformation. The right word is lies
Aye.
are being positioned as truth. And many people in our country, unfortunately, bought in to that rhetoric.
Okay, let's take one call real quick. Caller, you have a comment today. Hello?
This is Pierre. This is
Yes,
Pierre.
Pierre.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Good morning, everybody. I'm gonna be quick. I'm gonna tie all this together. I want to let real quickly. I want to let Milton know that thinking about the folk out there in LA, because you could do a whole show on what's going on just in Milton's town. With State Farm being denied, trying to raise the rates out there 22%. A fire chief at suspect. A law firm that's representing the city getting paid $2,000 an hour. So I keep up with what's going on out there with you, Milt. But I wanted to tie Attorney Prime's and Vanita's concerns all together when they talk about getting the message out, and Vanita talks about the Montgomery bus boycott. One of the beautiful things that I love about our previous civil rights leaders was they were strategic in how they moved. And that's why we were successful. They didn't use Colette Colvin for the bus boycott. They decided to go with Rosa Parks because they were being strategic. Now watch this. Because this is something that you talk about every week. Serena Williams and Kendrick Lamar, in my opinion, are intellectually ignorant. I'm going to tell you why. Nate and all you attorneys, who is the biggest man right now in this country? Everybody knows his name now. That would be Kendrick Lamar. And everybody knows Serena Williams right now. Those two collectively have the eyeballs of 200 million young people on them right now. Why haven't they called for young black folk, young white folk to get out and go register to vote? If all of those subliminal messages during the Super Bowl, why aren't they calling for these young people to go out and get registered to vote? Because that's the only way you're going to be able to push back on it. But I haven't heard anything from those guys. And, Milton, you live out there. You could probably go visit Kendrick and ask him why he's talking to young people, to go get them registered to vote.
Well, maybe he's talking to them in his language, in his songs. I can't say, Pierre, what he specifically should do, but I consider that halftime show to be a protest and a strong message to young people, personally, old people too.
Where's the message to vote? They could be doing so much more.
It always could do more.
They could be doing so much more. They've got the eyes of all of these people on them right now, but they ain't doing nothing but talking about when their next album's going to drop or something like that. Man, help me out. We're in a fight. Our troops aren't showing up to the fight. We need allies. I thought the halftime show, in my opinion, was a complete mess. I got the message, but it didn't help us win any allies. Our troops aren't showing up. We need people to show up, and those two could help us, but they're not doing anything. And then I was hoping you'd get to that lawsuit Drake filed, but I'll just take it right there. Thank you for taking my call.
Well, I think that we all need to encourage people to get out and vote. And I do that every day when I see clients, the hundreds of clients that we have. We get a message out to over 15,000 clients at our firms, try to encourage them to vote. And so, but I'm not going to be critical of what they're doing, because I think that is all hands on deck. Each of us have the same opportunity to influence people. Voting is not a global, voting is a neighborhood thing whereby you have to get your neighbors and your friends to vote. and everybody got to start thinking like that, you're not all of a sudden gonna get a magic wand and say everybody vote. It ain't gonna happen. We seen in the last election we saw about $5 billion spent on elections, and like in our city, for example, we had 470,000 registered Democrats, and less than half of those folks voted. And so I get to talk to those folks, some of the voters who didn't vote, despite the fact we sent them emails, we called them up, and they had a number of excuses. So the point I'm making is that I think it's not a situation where we should start criticizing these entertainers. I think more salient message that we each have a responsibility in our community to give the message out, because even if you have people watching that, it's not like all of a sudden they're going to go out and vote, register to vote. It's just not going to happen that way. I think that each individual has an obligation to get the people we know to register and vote. And that's a starting point. You got to remember, folks, in this last election, it wasn't a landslide. We lost in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania. For example, we saw the people from Palestine vote against Harris for the Biden administration. So if you take the number of Palestinians who voted for Trump in Michigan and in Pennsylvania, if they vote for Harris, she wins both those states. She wins a third state, she's the president. So the election came down to people who seemed to me were grossly, I don't know, I wouldn't say misinformed, but they misinterpret, I think, this war. They blame the Biden administration, what Netanyahu was doing over in Israel, and that's a sovereign nation. And I was just thinking about that. They were really upset about it. They had some good points, but man, oh man, I just think that it was an ill-conceived idea.
Hold that thought, Nate, real quick. Vanita, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Help me out. Remember back in the late 60s in Chicago, there was a gang member, and I can't remember what his name was, but he told the people, did he tell them to go out and vote for Nixon or something like that? And Nixon ended up carrying the state of Illinois. Do you remember that story?
I don't remember the story because I grew up in Indiana and only as a professional moved to Illinois. So I don't go that far back with my history with respect to Illinois, but tell us more, Pierre.
I believe there was a gang member that told the people how to vote in Chicago, and Nixon ended up winning that election. Nate, don't tell me that these influential figures do not have influence on moving masses of people. They can do it, and they have the power. There's 200 million people looking at Kendrick Lamar right now. Don't tell me that he doesn't have any influence that he can't use to tell people, to tell young people who are looking at him now, you want to scare the hell out of the man, go register to vote.
Yeah, maybe he was using people. Well, he can only do so much in a halftime show, and maybe that's foundation.
No, I'm not.
He can do.
Not at the halftime show. I'm talking about now.
Okay. I understand, gentlemen, and I think two things can be true at the same time, that each of us have power. We all, what I like to say is thrive where you're planted, and that all politics is local. It starts with your friends and family and cascades out to your community and your sphere of influence. At the same time, celebrities and others have incredible platforms as well. And from my perspective, this is Imhotep. Your point is well taken.
Yeah, see, I saw it as bringing the Crips and Bloods together. So you had red and blues, and they put white in there for the nation, and Serena out there doing the Crip dance. I don't know, Pierre. I just looked at that creation as something different than what you're looking at. I saw it as bringing us together somewhat, Maybe you saw it another way, but that's a basic step that we need to approach, especially out here in California.
Yeah, and I
And one
think both
thing,
things. I think both things can be true. I think entertainers have certainly an obligation, and we do individually as well. And I want to kind of take everyone back to an event that happened in where I live in Cleveland, Ohio. There was a summit in 1967 with Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali,
That's right.
some of the major sports stars got together, and they met in Cleveland to figure out what to do and how to use their influence to be of assistance. So I think what we need to do is just educate people, let them know that, hey, these are things that can be done. You can use your platform in positive ways. And at the same time, too, we have to recognize there have been athletes that have brought focus to issues. Remember Trayvon Martin and LeBron James, who's from my hometown, Akron, Ohio. They had protests. They spoke out about those particular issues. So I think it should be not just one person. I think it should be all of us.
True.
yeah.
It
And
has to be a collective, and everybody remember that we have to vote in every election, right? Not just the presidential elections every 4 years. Again, all politics is local. And so here in Illinois, there are elections that are coming up on April 1st for municipal and township offices. So these are mayors, these are trustees, of cities, and heads of the, school board, library boards. And so we have to connect with those local elections. I understand that there are over 1,000 elections that are going to be held this year, 2025, as we gear up for the midterms in 2026. And then, of course, we should be planning now as well for 2028. So also, let me just say this, that we are making lots of progress. There were over 1,000 Black women that ran for office in 2024 and of that 1,000 Black women, over 500 were elected, including two Black female U.S. Senators were elected. So we are making progress, and I'm confident, will and must continue to do so.
Well, I think Vanita raises a good point, about us getting involved in the process, running for election. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned as much as it possibly should to go to this point, Project 2025, one of the things that they basically said is that they were going to prepare 50,000 employees to go into the federal government. They were going to be training individuals to run for office. So that should be part of our plan as well. It's great that we had, more than 1,000, Black women running, but, we need to have a plan in terms of training people and getting the next wave to run for the election in 2028, 2032, and some of those midterms as well. This stuff that's happening right now, it's not by accident. All these executive orders, all this was planned, and we need to do the same thing if we're going to continue to help our people and move forward.
Hey, caller, you have a quick question or comment for us?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me today, and happy belated Valentine's Day for everyone. I have a couple quick points, and then I'm going to get off. One of them is that I'm going to push back on what Pierre said about the halftime show. I belong to a lot of social media groups. I even manage one. There's one group that I posted about the halftime show, which is majority white suburban women, and I got over 10,000 people who responded to that post about the halftime show. And all of them have said, they couldn't understand the lyrics. I said, that's okay. I'm Black, and I had to go back and listen to it several times to get the nuances and the symbolism. But they were having a discussion. They actually went back. Some of them even asked their grandchildren, what did I miss in this? They actually went back and watched it. So all those hundreds of millions of people people who actually viewed who went back to view that Super Bowl halftime show online were a lot of white people. So we do have white allies. And so for people to say we don't is ridiculous, because we can't do this by ourselves. We don't have the members. So there's got to be white allies out there. And I'm going to tell you, for those comments and everything, there are quite a few white allies out there. And that's because we're doing the work. We're going on the ground. We're making sure that people understand that civil rights is everybody's rights, not just for Black people. It's for everyone. And so now many are starting to see it. I'm seeing posts on white farmers who voted for Trump who are now saying they would not vote for him again because of the U.S. aid stoppage. They're not getting their money. They're going to go bankrupt. I mean, these are white farmers that voted for him in 2020 and 2024, and they never said they would never vote for Trump again. Well, of course they can't, but they're saying they're not voting for a Republican, and they're pissed because they're getting ready to be affected by all of this. So what I'm saying is we're building allies in places that we didn't think we could, but this is going to be about a movement of whether we're going to save this country or whether we're going to let this country go down the way that Putin runs his country. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the Adams thing. Well, Adams he's going to get whatever deal he gets, and specifically New Yorkers like myself. I live in New York City. I don't really care, just as long as he's not mayor again, and that's how we feel about it.
Hey, who's running against him? Hey, caller, who's running against him for mayor in New York? I was curious.
I don't know yet. I can research it a little bit more, but right now I think the list is not final. I had heard rumors of Cuomo, but I don't know if anybody's really thrown their hat in the ring yet. But I will do some more research, and the next time we talk, I'll let you know what I'm finding out on the ground, who's actually going to do it.
Maya Wiley, who's an African-American lawyer.
Well, report back next week. Hey, Carl, wait a second. Report back next week on the show, because I want you to update us on this mayor election in New York City, okay?
Oh, you get, and Attorney Pons, real quick. Yeah, Maya ran last time, but they did some sneaky crap. What they did was they did that 3-tier vote. Most people don't even know how to vote for one person, more like how that 3-tier voting was supposed to go. So she lost, I think, because of the 3-tier vote where people didn't put in a second or third choice candidate. And so she ended up losing. But anyway, I will report back. Thank you guys so much for taking my call. And I love you.
You that 3-tier vote too. I don't understand that. You're saying, that's a little bit different.
Okay, let me, I don't want to take up the rest of your time, but I will next week, I'll when we have more time, I'll break it down for you. But it's basically you pick your first choice, your second choice, and your third choice. If the first choice doesn't win outright with like 51%, then they recount again with the second choice. So whoever got the lowest is bumped out, and then they go for the second tier. So it's really stupid and complicated, but I don't know if they're doing that this time around. I have to research that too. But thank you so much for taking my call.
What's your name, caller? What's your first name?
Gwendolyn. I go by Renee. That's my middle name. So it's Gwen Renee.
Okay. Thank you, Gwen Renee. Have a good day.
And
okay, you too. Thank you.
States may have enacted the 3-tier voting process, if I'm not mistaken. I need to do that research as well.
Wow. Man, we covered a lot today, and we're at the end of our time.
And barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, we got 1 minute left, so quick closing comment. We've got 1 minute. Go ahead.
I'm looking forward to continuing these very important discussions, colleagues and listeners.
Well, stay informed and stay engaged.
I agree with that, Marlon. It's all about the right to vote. The right to vote and voting is very important, but we got some issues in front of us right now that we don't have time to vote from. We got vote for or against. We got to organize and do some things and stop Trump from taking Canada and another country and not supporting Ukraine. There are a lot of things on the list, y'all, that are very important.
And to all those ministers, come join us in Indianapolis this on February 20th at Olivet. We'll be hosting all the state Black ministers. We're going to be dealing with the history of this process and developing a strategy for dealing with the local issues, because we have a very sordid past here in Indiana in terms of the plans, things like that. and we have a governor who's trying to set us back. So thank you for joining us today, everyone. We look forward to continuation of these discussions next Saturday. Take care and may God bless and keep you. And happy Valentine's Day for all those folks we missed.